I wanted to really say thanks so much to share the Common Ground project, which is a regenerative farm, a cafe, a social enterprise, and Felicity being such a passionate human around farming and all things regenerative, and a wonderful entrepreneur and a deep thinker and wonderful practitioner. And just a shout out to Imogen, who's joining here as well from the Common Ground Project. I will leave the majority of the time. I won't do too much more on introductions. I'll hand over to Felicity now, just to take us into your world and your story. And what I really asked Flick to focus on was, the journey of Common Ground Project, as well as some of the aspects of the business model and the value that's being created through the way that the business model works. And if you have time, some words around the funding journey and how you're communicating the Common Ground project to others. And just for everybody listening in, after we've had this kind of guest nourishment, we'll have an opportunity to get into groups again. So make some notes of things that are coming up for you, nutrients that you think, oh, how might that inform or inspire what I'm doing? And we'll get to share those in groups after Flick has shared. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll let Felicity share hers. And thank you very much for joining us.
Beautiful. Is that working for everyone?
Sure is. And I'm just spotlighting you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Jimmy, and thanks to yourself and all the Regen Labs team for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure to connect with you all over the last few months. And yes, so fitting for what I guess we're probably all here to talk about. So before I begin, I'd just like to also acknowledge country. So I'm sitting here in our shipping container in Wadawurrung country. And yeah, we feel really privileged to be sort of stewarding about 4 acres of a 40-acre property here on Wadawurrung country. Freshwater Creek is the town that we're in, which, as I mentioned to a few people, is just about 20 minutes from Geelong, which is our major centre. And yeah, it's a really culturally significant region, particularly Freshwater Creek. We've got a beautiful river red gums that line the creek, which we can see about 500 metres from where we are. And we've been on a real journey walking alongside the Wadawurrung Traditional Owners Corporation to understand how obviously there's a bit of nuance and sort of complexity around food sovereignty, food systems, regenerating land, and obviously that land was, sovereignty was never ceded. So yeah, it's an ongoing journey for us. And that's why I put this picture as the start, because obviously in terms of regenerative agriculture and also regenerative communities, really it all starts with the soil and with the land. So just a quick synopsis of our mission. So that's actually, you can just see those river red gums. They're the big tall trees at the top of the screen. So that's the very clear sign of where the creek line is. So yeah, Common Ground Project was established in 2019, and Imogen is here from our board, one of our founding board members. So thrilled to have you here. And yeah, as Dimity mentioned, we have our regenerative farm, that building that you can see. We call it our cafe, but it's really our multi-purpose everything. Apart from my shipping container office and a few others, that's really our home base for all our team. And then we're also a social enterprise. So we have a lot of wraparound programs, whether that's in farming, food systems, or hospitality, that really have the overarching aim of connecting, which is obviously coming and visiting, and then hopefully empowering our community in one way or another. And so we very much exist to empower agency, access, hopefully advocacy as well. And we're also a registered DGR1 charity. So our main focus is actually including and supporting those who need it most, potentially for one reason or another, have lack of access to employment, healthy, fresh food, educational opportunities, or for one reason or another, just facing, challenges and barriers in their life. And as I'm sure many of us on this call would agree, connecting to land, to country, to community, to each other is really nourishing. And that's sort of above all what we hope when people come here. And then obviously down the bottom, I've just mentioned a little bit around um, our education, training, and employment programs are really how we make sure that we're getting those that are facing sort of greatest disadvantage and barriers to have that inclusive space, whether that's for cooking, purchasing, knowledge sharing, collaboration, hanging out. Uh, Never a dull day here. I was saying to Dimity and Lucy before we joined the call that I've had about 15 lives today already, so can't believe it's only 3 o'clock. So I guess sort of underpinning that mission, and it's what our founders really felt was that food brings people together. It has done for millennia. But our food system, our farming, fiber system, they really are in crisis in so many ways. If I talk to this region specifically, we're seeing really quite chronic rising food insecurity. So we work alongside some of our food relief agencies in the region. Obviously, they're playing a really crucial acute role in providing daily thousands and thousands of meals to the community. And then we're sort of playing that slightly deeper part of the system of, is food insecurity ever going to become a stronger, more resilient food system? Obviously, ecological collapse, I'm sure many of you in the rooms have something to do with the environment, whether it's in your work or in your hearts or in your family. Food systems, farming, land management, that was sort of the area when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to play a part. That's the bit that to me I felt kept getting missed. So obviously we have our transition away from carbon economy and net zero and all those goals, which we absolutely need. But I feel like for me personally, why I wanted to get into this work a number of years ago was to acknowledge that particularly our land and our land management and the way we're approaching food and fibre is extractive and it's really degrading. And certainly this property, while it didn't have sort of chemical degradation, it's been really, really overgrazed since, I guess, post-colonization. So very felled, flat landscape. And so we're just trying to understand what bringing that back to ecological health looks like. Obviously, with those two things in mind, we're seeing deteriorating physical, mental health, and then that leads to that economic. So all the fun things that I know is a bit big concepts all in one, but that was really what has always and continues to spur us on to say that even though some days you have 15 things that are all pressing to do, we really need these local community-based regenerative food and farming ecosystems. And really Common Ground Project in this region, we're just one of many. There's some really amazing momentum in the Surf Coast and Greater Geelong region. There's a number of small-scale growers, a number of other great initiatives like Farm My School. I could name heaps, but if you want to chat more, let me know. And as a growers collective, we catch up seasonally, so quarterly, and have a yarn and just talk about how hard it is, of course, sometimes to be a small scale grower, but what we want to see, and particularly more recently, maybe how we need to be a bit more political and how we need to advocate to all levels of government to acknowledge that if we want to have local food systems, there's going to need to be structural policy incentives there as well. But in lieu of those policy changes, we're not going to wait for them to happen. So I guess, yeah, as Dimity mentioned, I can go into greater depth in our business model if anyone wants to chat about it, but it has sort of ebbed and flowed over the years. So as I mentioned, we are a not-for-profit and a charity as well. So don't have any shareholders, no owner. 4 main components of the organisation. So we have our cafe and event space. So farm to table menu. We have a few weddings coming up. Tomorrow we have 5 events on site. So that's going to be a ball of fun to figure out where everyone's going to fit. And then we also do catering around the region. So that's sort of our public hub, really accessible. It's open Wednesday through to Sunday. And it's just such a great space to welcome the community. And underneath that, I've put these on the same side because our food hub and market is open at the same time. So Wednesday to Sunday, inside the cafe, you can purchase organically grown produce from local producers. And we support about 20 local producers in the region. So obviously, they don't all need us solely. We're not their sole source of revenue, but with that concept of being a food hub, and we were chatting to a few people on our call, our breakout sesh was, distribution of small scale producers is often the biggest challenge because either it means a farmer's working 7 days a week if they have to go to farmers markets or be their own delivery driver. Obviously, it's expensive for everyone to have refrigerated vans. And sometimes, small scale growers are small. So being able to sell widely is just not an option for them. So that's really why we've established the food hub, to say, come and stock your produce here. We'll look after it. We have quite a good amount of fridge space, even though they're all deciding to break because they're 12 years old. So infrastructure challenges, I'm sure many of you know those as well. And so over on our right-hand side, I guess, is some of the more community-based programmatic work down the bottom. So we run school programs, workshops. We have sort of corporate volunteering programs, training and employment programs. This year we've had 11 placement students, and they've all come from different, we have a partnership with Deakin, so they've all come from really different cohorts. We had a dietitian student, 3 eco-social work students, which is just such a cool thing in general. We had 2 vet farming students. So I guess that to me is sort of the epitome of a regenerative enterprise is you cut across lots of different sectors, certainly lots of different Deakin departments. None of them know each other, which we all find hilarious. We actually had an environmental planning student. So yeah, I guess we're really wanting to be not only a food hub, but that regenerative hub in the region to provide pathways, whether it's someone's first job or whether it's sort of on the way of their career, of understanding that you can work in this space and there's some really cool things happening. And then obviously on the top right, as I mentioned, we're on farmland that's incredibly flat, quite degraded, on the parts of the property that we haven't really started regenerating yet. It's like concrete. It's really hard to even get anything into that soil. And so we've spent particularly the last 5 years opening up growing space, predominantly for vegetables, so horticulture, but we're also doing a lot of biodiversity native planting in the market garden, but also around the market garden. So I guess alongside a number of other farmers in this region, we're really trying to explore that concept that, we had farming over here and nature over here and bringing them back together and the benefits that you get from having biodiversity across your property. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. So obviously that's quite a bit. And so how is it all funded? So I guess I put the last 2 financial years here just to show that it really fluxes. So a few points to note on 22, 23, we were 70% trade, 30% grants and funding. I mean, that's pretty rudimentary. There's probably a bit of nuance in there, but I guess a quick bit of context, in that year, we had a restaurant instead of a cafe. So it was more of a premium sort of set menu, fancy vibe. So obviously pulls in a higher price point, but does isolate a lot of the community. And so when that was a COVID incarnation, when the couple that were running that decided to move on, we were like, okay, we need to turn this back into a cafe and then be able to do pop-up dinners and all sorts of things. So if we look to 2024, our trade's a lot lower because cafes are a bit harder to run. We've also hit that cost of living fun time in the last year. And we're just really seeing it get its gear again. But I'd also mention that we have actually received a bit more funding too. So I guess the aim, and when we're speaking particularly with sort of social enterprise funders and starting to look at, are we ready for loan? So are we starting to look at sort of beyond donations and grants? Are we finance ready? Probably not for bank finance, but there's some really great catalytic finance coming up in the market using, corpus and all sorts of things from different philanthropic foundations. So we're trying to talk to them about like we want our trade to increase, but we do still need funding for that sort of impact wraparound costs that we don't want to go away because we want to keep being able to have more and more programs here on the farm. So this is just a quick drawing visual of the property, the 4 acres, and it's going to move all your faces. So I guess for us, like regeneration is really about 5 key principles. So minimal soil disruption. Just for context, when we did start opening up those east and north garden beds, we did have to use a tractor because it was just so like concrete. It was so degraded that we couldn't get anything in there. But ever since then, and our sort of crop rotation now is very low to minimal impact. As I mentioned before, increasing biodiversity across the property. So I kind of popped this little graphic in too, because everywhere around the meadow and the dam and the south orchard, anywhere, I mean, there's not too many trees on this diagram, but hopefully there's more. We might keep adding to the diagram as we tree plant more because the meadow is really where we're wanting to create sort of biodiversity corridors. And there's some really cool stuff happening in Freshwater Creek with rewilding Freshwater Creek, which is led by some of the locals. So yeah, again, as I said, like so the Barwon Southwest region's got some very passionate humans wanting to make sure we have biodiversity corridors. So we're just a tiny, tiny player in that. In terms of that soil health again, so how we really constantly bringing health to the soil is using cover crops. So things like grains, legumes, mustards. They all have different root taps. They go down different lengths. They fix or give different nutrients back to the soil. And then we turn those back in. So as we say to the children, we grow plants to feed the soil, not to feed us. And then that process takes about 6 months, and that soil's just been able to eat and consume all that yummy, all that nutrients. And we've seen some really significant changes to the pH levels comparatively to the parts of the farm that we haven't touched. And also to we've put quite a few soil samples under microscope, and the microbial, bacterial, fungal life is pretty immense. So that's really great to see. We don't use any chemicals, so no sprays, no pesticides, no anything across the property. And the way we manage that is we do have obviously crop loss, but it's minimized a lot by using things like shade cloths, netting, and that biodiversity in between a lot of our bed rows is where a lot of the critters and things like to hang out in our tree rows because it's really wooded. And then there's lots of different, like we literally can see ladybugs and aphids, and we're like, great, they should sort themselves out. And we're sort of constantly observing what's happening. And then sort of that 5th principle is around integrating livestock. So we don't have any cattle or sheep, but we do have our chickens, which you can sort of see there in the middle left. So they're very much our biodigesters. They eat everything from the cafe and our kitchen that doesn't get consumed by the guests that come here. And then we also take them out into different parts of the farm when we want to turn a bed, or particularly we take them out into the meadow because so we've got a sort of electric portable fence because if they do their business on the meadow, we then slash that and use the hay to make our compost. So you can start to see how things are getting a bit circular. But I will be quite like, we're so proud as well that we don't do everything here because there's some other great people and communities and organizations. So we get a lot of our compost from another compost grower because that's their business and they're really good at it. It's organic. They know how to do it at scale. We haven't done that yet. So we're also using a lot of local, basically the whole organization is really built on partnerships. We're really not trying to do it all alone. We're trying to be that sort of public example because there's probably not too many places where you can go and visit to learn about these types of practices. Oops. So just a quick comparison. So, I mean, I will also always caveat this. There's probably a bit of drought going on in 2020. But I'm also put this here to show, if you particularly look at that, I'll hover here. So the north area, like it was really nothing happening. And now it's growing really gorgeous organic produce, really bio-intensely planted. And yeah, as I mentioned, just like tastes amazing. You can't quite see, but some of those trees have started to grow. You can see a whole lot of tree planting here that didn't used to exist. Again, 3 years is for us, particularly from a food growing perspective, is really empowering to see how much change you can make in 3 years, which is really not much time. From a tree growing broader perspective, obviously things take a little bit more time. But even if I went and took some photos this year, we've really seen some things really shoot up this year. So it's a very rewarding process as well. So yeah, just getting a bit more into our sort of programmatic work. As I mentioned, we have all sorts of wonderful humans here. Tomorrow, as I said, we've got 5 groups. We've got a corporate lunch for a Christmas party at the cafe. We have 20 corporate volunteers coming to help us on the farm. We've got 90 kindergarten students coming for a little learn about basically chickens, because that's what they all have the brain capacity to love. We are hosting an off-site market at Cultura, which is a multicultural service agency. And what's our 5th one? We've got 2 bookings at a cafe. So anyway, I was just going to share that because we have lots of people coming through each day and each week. But I guess from a programmatic perspective, we really focus on working with young people and cohorts facing structural disadvantage. So migrant refugee women, people with a disability. I know that it does feel a bit broad, but we sort of exist for the community, by the community. So as I mentioned before, we've got partnerships with over 30 organisations across the region, Deakin, Geelong Tech School, probably over 50 schools actually, primary, secondary, kinder. And then we also work with a lot of youth organisations, the council departments, youth team, climate action team. I could go on. In my dream, I'll one day have a slide that's just like all the things in a system diagram, but I don't have that slide right now. And so this is a bit of a sort of overarching summary. So training and employment programs. The one up in the top left here is our Staying Grounded program. So that was established during COVID to provide migrant and refugee women with employment pathways. So they're paid to work in our kitchen with us. And it's just such a successful program. And it's hopefully growing. They're now doing a lot of our catering events and take-home meals as well. So we've had over 36 women through over the last 4 years. And we have a waiting list of over 30 women. We just don't have the funding. I'm sure that's probably a familiar story for some of you. Internships and placements, as I mentioned, while some people might say, oh, it's free, we really want to make them have an incredible internship and placement. And obviously we need an educator to be able to do that with them. So we're also currently seeking funding to just be able to allow us to say yes to maybe 50, maybe not 50, but 20, 30 placements a year, and know that that student or young person or mature age student is getting a really great experience and is not just filing or something like that on the side. They're actually part of real projects that we're working on. Education and workshops. So that's everything from school programs through to bespoke 2-day workshops looking at climate action, advocacy, often bringing in experts in their field to help us run those. And then we have a weekly volunteering with the public every Tuesday, which is so phenomenal. It's our harvest day. So we get 5 to 15 sort of volunteers every Tuesday. We try and make it really rewarding for them. They have morning tea and lunch with us, and we hope to help them on their journey if they're just wanting some social connection, or if they're wanting to learn skills for their own garden or often their own project as well. It's a bit more about school programs. I'm sure Dimity can share the slides after, so I'll let you read through those in your own time. I've just got a few more slides. So as I mentioned, we have a food hub here, which is really the whole organisation. The definition of a food hub is really what it says there. So increasing access to local food, education, opportunities, that encourage communities to celebrate, showcase, and learn. So I guess that really is our ethos as well. But I just want to be really, clear as well that this was a really incredible funding partnership with Vic Health over 2.5 years. That's coming to an end in February. So we lose 3 full-time staff in February, which is really sad, mostly because of them as individual humans, but also as an organisation, we're going to have to do a bit of a restructure. And that to me is part of that business model and reality. If you're obviously maybe not fully for profit as a regenerative organisation, that funding train is real. And it's something that, we're working with at the moment to understand how do you grapple with that concept of the community demand over here being like, love what you're doing, just let's do more. And then the funding not quite matching that. And hence Regen Labs. I think Dimity's going to speak about that at the end of this session. We have veg boxes for pickup as well. So just, lots of little ways of, revenue for us, but also hoping to get local food into our community. And then, as Dimity asked as well, what you're learning about communicating the multiple benefits. I think as I've sort of spoken about already, we've got that sort of economic development piece. We've got that piece around biodiversity, habitat restoration. We haven't done too much on CO2 mitigation and adaptation, but we talk a lot about climate resilience. So adapting and mitigating from a landscape perspective. So we had flooding, like many of the eastern, communities in 2022 were really affected. So we adapted all our drainage, and that's mostly, touch wood, been quite effective. So this snapshot here is a bit old now. I'm just finalising this year. So this is from last year. But as you can sort of see, people, planet, performance, we try and look at it really holistically. We could communicate so many more benefits if we had a little bit more time and maybe a few more legendary team members that would help us garner this data, particularly some of that environment data. It's really hard to capture environmental data, we find, as opposed to social data, because you can sort of capture, as long as we're really good at making sure we note down which programs and we do regular surveys with those programs, we can keep quite a good understanding of where we're sort of having impact in the community. But we really want to focus on understanding what our environmental impact is as well. And then performance is there because we think that's absolutely vital. If we don't have financial viability and a well-performing team, then that's, there's nothing. And I'm really passionate about, like I mentioned, volunteers, and I think we could do a lot more with volunteers, but I'm also really passionate about the fact that our staff are on paid award wages, because I think we're a bit ignorant at the fact at the moment of how many people in food systems and farming are paid really below wage or often not paid at all. So that side of it I'm very passionate about. Oops. I think this is my last slide. So I guess just looking forward, this slide could be 50 slides, but I just wanted to sort of condense it into a few small things. So as I mentioned, like we have women that we really want to put through our Staying Grounded program. So, just again, for sort of some of that solidarity, I've written about 16 grants for Staying Grounded this year, and we've received 1. So, that's just the reality of the funding cycle as well. We want to have over 2,000 young people engaging in 100. I mean, it doesn't have to be 100 education programs, but basically we want to have lots of young people come through our doors. And we want to try and have 1,000 hours of internships and placements next year. We would like to expand the farmland a little bit, but that's going to take capital. So again, TBC. We certainly have a goal of planting more trees, and we've got some great partnerships with other organisations such as Barwon Water, 15 Trees, just lots of cool things that often will help you get the trees. And so we just have to put on a community day, excuse me, to plant those trees. we really want to get better at reducing our landfill in the kitchen, particularly because hospitality loves plastic. So that's a real goal. We've just transitioned our chucks to reusable cloths, which again seems so simple, but because of where we are, we couldn't find a provider that would come pick up the cloths, and we've just found one. So yeah, you have to sort of go in baby increments and take the wins when you can. We haven't been good at measuring our tons of food waste diverted to chooks, but we really want to be able to measure tons diverted to resources. So we're, doing a lot of pickling and bottling of stock that wouldn't get sold from the farm. And certainly wanting to increase our revenue next year, predominantly through cafe events, and obviously paid programs as and where possible as well. Um, I think that's everything for me. So yeah, I'll share these slides, but feel free to reach out. I think there's a few people on the call who have reached out and I haven't emailed back. I'm so sorry. Just keep reaching out. We'll get in touch eventually. But yeah, thanks so much again for Dimity and the team for allowing me to share today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Felicity. Can everyone give like a, one of these? Thank you so much.